editors called him the Nightmare, or some of them did anyway. Six-time Mr. Olympia, Dorian Yates. So we're here with Marty. Marty, we're talking bodybuilding today. What qualifies you to write and speak about bodybuilding, even though you're not a bodybuilder?
Yeah, I found myself in a strange situation back in the late 80s. I'd been a writer for Powerlifting USA and for Milo, and I had a lot of articles published at that point. And I got approached by Dr. Jim Wright, who is the health and science editor at Flex Magazine, and he said, hey, you know, we'd like you to write for Muscle and Fitness, which was, they were the biggest bodybuilding magazine in the world at the time. The internet hadn't killed the magazine industry as of yet. You're aware that, you know, magazines were the information source for bodybuilding, and then they just got crushed with the onset of the internet, right? You tracking?
Right.
Yeah. So they approached me and they said, hey, you're a really good writer and you're particularly good on training stuff, so can you do some bodybuilding stuff? And man, they paid good. At the time, they were paying $1 a word, you know, so I was like, yeah, sure, I can write. Yeah, let's go. So I ended up, in the time that I was at Muscle and Fitness, I wrote a little bit for Flex, a lot for Prime. I did 84 published articles for the Weider organization. And my main niche was I was the training editor guy. So I would interview our stable of bodybuilders on their training and eating and write up the, you know those articles. You read them all the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And it'd be like a feature article on whoever, Porter Cottrell or Flex or, you know, the top pros at the time. This would have been the early 90s. This was the reign of Dorian. And so anyway, I moved up quickly in the organization. I ended up, they'd fly me to the Olympia, they'd fly me to the Arnold, I'd sit the front row, they'd put me up in the best hotels. I mean, it was first class all the way with Joe, man. I mean, he, you know, and I started out, Bob Wolf was my boss with Tom Dieters. Tom was the big boss, and I really got rolling hard with Bob. We did a lot of work together. Then later, there was a change in management. But anyway, so getting back to Dorian, he came out of England, and initially he was a good English European bodybuilder, but he wasn't scaring anybody in the West Coast. You know what I mean? You with me?
Yeah. So here it is, the early 90s. You're writing for Muscle and Fitness and Flex, and that's pretty much the reign of Dorian. So he comes on the scene. What were your initial first impressions of him?
He didn't scare anybody. He was he was another 5'10", 225-pound guy. Now he had a really good degree of conditioning, right? He was unusually dry and tight for a big guy. But what happened was that his big breakthrough came second to Haney at the last year of Haney's reign. How long was Lee the boss for? 8 years? Was he 8 years?
Yeah, I believe 8 years.
Yeah, I think Lee's reign was for 8 years. His last year, Dorian came in second. I'm pretty sure it was a distant second, but he came in second. You know, he looked good, you know. Then the next year, Lee retired, and Dorian won in Finland. And he went against, and Kevin Levrone took second. That was like Kevin's first big breakthrough competition, right? So you had these two sort of upstart guys taken over, and I think Dorian told me that he was 228 when he won that. I might be off on that. Peter McGuff would know best. Peter wrote the book on Dorian, Blood and Guts.
Right.
No, you guys should get that. You should also get Dorian's tape, Blood and Guts. That's the best. It's the tape, right?
There's also
The
a lot of
YouTube,
good,
right?
clips from that on YouTube.
Yeah, the YouTube. Yeah, get the tape. Get your VHS copy. My era. But in that year between when he won initially at Finland at 228, and he probably could have weighed 240 in that competition, but he felt he had to come in really biased toward being ripped as opposed to, size and condition. So he came in probably a little light in Finland. You with me? Okay. So the next year in between, his off-season weight jumped up to as heavy. He got up to like 290 in the off-season, right? While still maintaining a 10% body fat percentile, handling gargantuan weights and just getting humongous. He cut down and got some photos shot, some black and white photos shot in his Temple Street gym. And those are those famous breakthrough photos. He's weighing, I think, 270. He's just looking gargantuan. I think you've got one. Don't you have one of them posted on the website?
We've got one. You just did an article, Forged Passion,
Right.
Dorian Yates. We just put it up on the website for anybody who wants to go check it out.
But I'm pretty sure that photo that you have is him. He's doing just a double bicep, right?
He's doing, I think it was a double.
Yeah, he's just standing there. He's standing there in the basement. He's wearing socks.
Yeah, and it's one of the I chose that one because that's one of the most incredible pictures of him that I've ever seen. He's got some great images where he looks fantastic.
That's that series of photos I'm talking about that blew everybody's mind. Everybody saw him weigh 228 and win the Olympia.
He's on a lat spread in this one, by the way.
Okay, could be all the same. He just did a bunch of compulsories, lat spread, double bi, I forget what else. But that's when that happened. He'd won the Finland weighing 228. All of a sudden, mid-year, these incredible photos of him weighing 270 and looking just, like from another planet. And it just blew everybody away. And he took over. And that year was his best year. The best legs. He had the best legs of any Olympia winner ever. Now, you got to remember, Platt's never won an Olympia. But I don't think there's any question that Dorian's legs, his calves are incredible, and his thighs are incredible.
This is such a great shot of him. And if you look at his face says it all. His face just says, that's right, look at this.
I'm the boss.
Yeah.
So that was his peak year. He had the best legs of any Olympian history and had the best back of any Olympian history, right? His back was incredible, particularly relaxed. I've never seen a relaxed back to come close to his.
It must have been 91. When I was working for American Sports Network with Lou Zwick, I was all of 18, 19 years old, and Lou sends me down to a Weider photo shoot one day.
In Woodland Hills? Yeah, in Woodland Hills.
Yeah, he was doing a photo shoot over there. He says, go down and pick up Dorian Yates. I get down there, and it changed. He says, no, don't pick up Dorian. He says, I'll pick up Akeem Albrecht, which was a big German guy.
Right.
But I saw, so my first, this must have been 91, because when I saw him, I was like, oh, yeah, that's Dorian Yates. And he was a big dude, but he wasn't the monster that he turned into be yet. He was approaching that, and I just remember seeing him, just being in awe. And Joe Weider was there, oddly enough, sitting at a table piled high with donuts. I guess that was for the camera guys and all that, but I'll never forget that.
To torture everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the interesting thing about Dorian is he was like a hothouse planter. I mean, he was raised in isolation over in England, and basically you know, he swore allegiance to Mike Mentzer and Art Jones, but if you dig down in his training, he really trained more like a power lifter who did forced reps and drop sets than he did adhering to, you know, Jones's one set to failure plus forced reps and negatives, right? Because, I mean, you don't, as I said in the article, you just don't walk into the gym and load up 435 pounds in the incline and do 6 regular reps and then have Leroy step in and give you 2 forced reps. You got to take 135, 225, 275, 315, 365. You know what I mean? You got to warm up to that. You just don't walk in and grab 435. Or if you're doing leg presses, you don't just load up to 1,300 pounds and go, okay, well, let's do our forced reps and negatives. No, man, you got to warm up to that. Well, that's not one set to failure. That's a bunch of warm-up sets and then go to failure and forced reps. That's a lot different. That's a lot closer to powerlifting with forced reps, right? Now he opened up the menu.
To his point, that one set to failure was so intense. There was no way that he was doing a second set with that. So he moved on. He went to a different exercise.
And that's what lifters do.
Yeah.
So what we do, we don't, you know, we just, well, that's what intensity bias lifters do, as opposed to volume bias lifters. Volume bias lifter might do, after warm-ups, 5 sets of 5 with a static weight. Well, we'll take a massive 5. Now, what Dorian would do is he would take that. Now, we'd take 5 but not be able to get 6, right? Key critical difference. That's 100%. You're taking it as far as you can take it. You don't have to fail with a rep to know that you shouldn't tie into that rep, right?
Yeah.
So that's what Dorian was doing, and he had the great Leroy, his perfect training partner, who just gave him these perfect forced reps, and they also would do drop sets, and his training template was like a lifter. 4 times a week, you know, basically hit every major muscle and every major lift 1 time a week. So you'd have basically 7 days recovery between each body part, right?
Everybody needs a Leroy, by the way. You had to do your forced reps with that guy. There's no getting off the hook. Who was your Leroy?
Well, we had Bobby Myers. You know, Bob was ferocious, and yeah, we had a bunch of good training partners, man.
And Bob Myers is in most of the Kirk videos, the squat videos, and he's the guy.
All of them. Bob rapped Kirk.
All of them.
Bob
and
rapped
he's the
Kirk's.
guy with the big booming voice.
Bob rapped.
You know, talking trash, getting him fired up.
Bob rapped Kirk's knees. So Bob was always there for every world record, national record attempt. Bob rapped Kirk's knees. He was his guy.
And what's really cool is you guys still all train together so many years later, you know?
That's right. So let's swing back to Dorian real quick. So his training was unique. His eating was unique too. He wasn't a Nazi. He would have, in his diet, he'd have like beef and bagels, you know. It wasn't all, you know, fish and, you know, dry chicken breast and, you know, broccoli. He had some sanity in his eating. He never, according to Peter's book, he never dipped below 3,200 calories, even in the lead up to the Olympia. But he was a big guy who'd carry as much as 300 pounds in the off season, so he might eat 600,000 calories a day in the off season. Relatively clean food. He also, we went to lunch one time together, and he told me that he has a real problem with fat. If he eats a lot of saturated fat, it makes him sick. So I think that actually worked in his favor a little bit. You know, as a bodybuilder, I think it was a good aversion to have. My wife has like food allergies, which keeps her away from a lot of foods I like, but are probably unhealthy for you. But she has a low body fat percentile as a result. I think that maybe Dorian had a little bit of that too. But he just is a very naturally tight guy with thin skin, which is a gift. You know, like some guys have really tight fascia and really thick skin, and it's just really hard to detect any muscular delineation. But he was just he was sort of the opposite.
Interesting. Now, he had a few injuries, but the thing about Dorian was he was incredible at just pushing forward. And let's just talk about the injuries that he suffered before. When did the injury start?
Well, I can't remember the exact year, but I know that right after the peak year that I talked about, the peak Olympia year, then I believe that the way the sequence went is then in that off season, I believe that's when they made the Blood and Guts video. And if you've seen that, he is just immense and shapely and quite lean for a guy who's weighing, I don't know, I heard 292, 295 pounds. And he is not a tall guy. And in those Blood and Guts videos, man, they are just slinging weight around like it's nothing, like they're lifters, right? Now, he was unable to squat. He used to squat, but he picked up squat injuries, so he couldn't squat anymore. So he was kind of confined to leg pressing. But after the Blood and Guts videos, he had a series. Now, I believe it was after the Blood and Guts video. He had a series of 3 injuries. Like bang, bang, bang. He tore a vastus muscle in his thigh, which prevented him from doing any leg training, you know, which is a big detriment for a defending Olympia champion. Then, what was his second injury? Do you remember? He had a second injury in there, and then the third, of course, was the ripped bicep. I believe it was his left bicep, and it was quite visible. Yeah, I mean, you damn well noticed when he came out, either when he was standing relaxed or when he flexed it. It wasn't like, oh yeah, you can't hardly tell. And Julian used to make excuses. He'd say, you know, Marty, it's only a half inch of muscle. It's nothing. I said, yeah, but it looks weird, Julian. I honestly, Dorian always won. After the injury, he still won, I believe, 3 more Olympias, right? And it was just a testament to his, I don't know, willpower. He's tenacious.
Keep going on and pushing through and trying and succeeding.
Yeah, he had a kind of a bulldog kind of a attitude about him. I always thought he was a classical English tough guy, but I mean in a real sense, you know, like I work with the special boat service guys, and you could easily see Yates or someone like Yates, you know, working with those spec op commandos, right? That kind of a vibe. He also moved like an athlete. So many of the gargantuan bodybuilders, they almost like they can barely maneuver. You know, they're so big. I mean, to the point that they literally are muscle bound. Who was the big Frenchman? Remember Jean-Paul Fuchs, Jean-Pierre Fuchs? Do you remember him?
Right. Yeah.
He was at an IFBB prejudging that I was at, and at the time he was in like contest shape 300, and he couldn't get his left arm back around his lower back to do the tricep pose, and he made a big deal out of that. Oh, I am so big I cannot get my arm from around my back, you know, and it was just like the antithesis of athleticism, right? Function, form without any function, form without any function, just like a statue.
Right.
It's like a massive statue.
When you're a bodybuilder at that level, I mean, you've got to be able to hit all those poses and make them look good. And like you said, yeah.
This crop of giant swollen guys that they've got here currently, they don't look like they could get out of their own way to do anything. I mean, they're so bulbous that it's, you know, it's just, I don't know, it's Dorian to me was like the outer boundaries of how big a person can get and still portray some athleticism, right? Yeah, I got that from him.
He's got Dorian has a son, Louis Yates. I was checking out some pictures of him today. He looks pretty good. He's got a lot of Dorian similarities. I don't know what his goals are, if he's competing or going to be competing, or if he's taking Dad's place or what he's doing. But there's a side by side on Google that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They kind of have the same shape to them.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, I remember him vaguely. He would have been a young boy. He would have been 10 or 11 years old at that time. I think the lesson from Dorian is, number one, I think his physique still resonates today. I think there's something about his look that still captures the attention of a lot of the young guys today, despite now you've got guys that dwarf Dorian, but the way that they dwarf them is not necessarily pleasing, right? So I think that Dorian still resonates to this day. I think his training is also so interesting. I wrote an article for Muscle and Fitness at the time comparing Dorian's training to Ed Cohn's training and the similarities, and how Ed kind of was a lifter who had incorporated a wider range of bodybuilding movements, and Dorian was a bodybuilder who had kind of gone over and expropriated some of the lifting intensities, you know. So it was interesting. Their two training templates had far more similarities than differences. And it was very interesting that for a short period of time, the world's best built man and the world's strongest man essentially trained the same. 85%. 85% trained the same, which I think is still a lesson to this day.
Absolutely. That's proof it works. I mean, two different guys on different ends of the athlete spectrum, so to speak. You know, one's a bodybuilder, one's a power lifter, and well, you know, that's how you guys have done it this whole time, and that's how, you know, Kirk and you know, it's all about minimalism and get in, get out. You know, so it works.
And you can contrast that too. You know, like in the off season, you can go to a high volume approach. In fact, that would be smart.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's the thing. You always want to switch it around, don't
contrast, you? Right? You get the contrast in. It's not one note year round. But if you're leading up to a competition, you want your best Sunday punch, right?
Right.
So that's if I need to be strong, I'm going to save my power training for before that event. Right? I'm not going to waste my power training in the off season. Well, Yates and Cohn and Kirk and Cassidy and so many, those guys are power trainers, right? There's a similarity between how they deal with the barbell and how they deal with the whole size and strength equation, right? And it's that combination of heavy weights, good quality calories, and an allegiance to getting stronger. The genius of Dorian is he made drew the conclusion that if he got significantly stronger, he'd be able to get significantly bigger. So that's what he did. He got way stronger. That made him way bigger.
Got it. Well, I think that's a lot of great information on the great Dorian Yates.
Yeah, one of the few bodybuilders we're interested in. Dorian, Sergio.
All right, so we're going to close it up here. Let me just say, check out Marty's weekly column and podcast videos, Raw with Marty Gallagher at ironcompany.com, and you'll also find a huge selection of fitness equipment and gym flooring. Marty's books, Purposeful Primitive and Strong Medicine, can be purchased at Iron Company as well, and also on Amazon, and also at Dragon Door. Both Marty and Kirk Kowalski are available for seminars and online coaching. If you go to our athletes page, you can see their contact information there. If you want online coaching or something, just hit them up. Just send them an email, and they'll contact you back. And let's see, what else? If you want to see a great video, we just released the Kirk Kowalski video, never before seen footage of a little beach party that he had back in '94 at his peak, and he was an absolute monster. So if you want to find that, go to YouTube and type in Kirk Kowalski metrics or beach video or beer. It's all in there, so it'll come up.
It's called.
Check that out. It's pretty mind-blowing how thick this dude was.
It's called Muscle Beach Blanket Bingo.
Right. And finally, if there's any subject matter that you want to hear about or any questions you want to ask that you want us to discuss next time, just go ahead and leave us a note on Facebook. We're going to go ahead and put this on YouTube so you can listen to it later. Also be on our Facebook page. In the meantime, I think that's about it. We'll see you guys next time.
Roger that.